Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Morrison, Chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to our regular meeting of Wednesday, December 20th. I would like to recognize that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasset, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Pakwachan, DT and Pachi nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. Ms. Boyd, number one on the agenda, on number one.
Thank you, Chair. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, additions, omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair. Adoption of the minutes of the minutes of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 6, 2023 be adopted.
Moved. Do we have seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries.
M2, that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 6, 2023 be adopted.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
M3, that the minutes of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 7th, 2023 be adopted.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? The motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair. 3, no business arising from the minutes, and 4, public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on any agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been subject to a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum.
Now, I'd like to invite anyone that would like to provide input to the committee on anything on today's agenda. Now would be the time. We don't have anyone online, do we, Ms. Boyd? Would you like to provide us with some input? Please come up to the lectern and press the button on the microphone and you'll... There we go.
Thank you.
And your name and the item that you'd like to provide input on.
I don't have the number of the item. It's regarding Marble Bay,
Okay.
the cottages at Marble Bay. My name is Lorna Morrison. I'm the president.
Oh, sorry, I'm just going to turn on the camera on this computer.
Okay.
Just so
Okay.
I can see you too.
Good.
Thank you, Michelle.
Good. I'll start. My name's Lorna Morrison. I am the president of the Strata, the cottages at Marble Bay, Strata 5772. We're here about our water system today, and you're going to be chatting about that. Just a bit of history. It isn't long. 2001 was the start of our development. 50 lots were developed with roads, sewer, water, etc. And 37 of those lots are built upon. I don't know the number of who lives there full-time and who doesn't, but we'll go with 50-50. So we have a fairly good contingent of folks that are living there. The challenge that we face as a board, obviously, is the water situation that we have on the mountain. We spent approximately $200,000 this past year drilling the one well that we have left, deeper, another 500 feet. We've expended a fair amount of money on the technology to monitor it regularly. The 2 people that are with me on our committee are members of a water committee that the board struck. Jan Francois is here for Christmas holidays from Britain, and he is a reservoir geologist. He lives at the cottages in the summertime, and we're happy to have him on our water committee and here as an expert in the field. And Ron Townley, a resident of the neighborhood as well, and he is on the water committee. Everyone else is away for Christmas holidays, so we're as good as it's going to get. And so we've made an investment. We've done a lot of work with all of the owners of the property on water conservation. I think to really meeting the climate needs and certainly meeting our needs in order to conserve. Many of the people there are already in the process or have installed cisterns, so any outdoor watering and outdoor use, but all can be, or a lot of people are talking about conversion. We pump water, we buy water when we run low. We have a very, very large water reservoir that gravity feeds the properties. And for the most part, people have been 100% supported and accountable to the usage of the water. Thank goodness the rains came. We live in a time of climate change. We know that. We have one well and one well only. So our risk is in any shift in the mountain, any shift in the land for whatever geological reason, we at one point, we could lose our ability to provide potable water to our community. So that is a very large challenge that we're facing right now. We've come, Karen Deck has been very supportive of our water committee group and our board. And we just hope we will be able to work a positive partnership going forward. And we have overwhelming support from all strata members on moving this agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, I just come to realize that you have an item on the agenda and you're sort of part of the applicant to that, so I
Yes.
appreciate you getting up. I would have given you the same opportunity at a little later in the agenda, but thank you for that information, and
Thank you.
glad that you've got your support team here with you. And aquifer geologist, eh?
Thank you.
You have a unique set of skills that. So with that, any other further public input on today's agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Boyd, next item on the agenda. Oh, she doesn't want her timer alarm to go off inadvertently again.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have any delegations. Moving to correspondence. Number 6, C1, grant and aid request, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake regarding Sunrise Waldorf Parent Association. That it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Sunrise Waldorf Parent Association to assist with the funding of an elementary school climbing structure.
Moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director McClinton. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd, when will these be going to the board?
This would be going up to the board in January 17th.
January 10th.
Sorry, January 10th. Got those two
Thank
mixed up
you.
again.
Good backup there. Next item.
Thank you. C2, recommendation that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Cowichan Bay Improvement Association to assist in funding for the new garbage recycle receptacles for the village core.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you. The next following items are for information. It's the Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes of November 14th, 2023. The Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes from November 20th, 2023. And Electoral Area I, Yubo Mead Creek Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes November 29th, 2023. For information.
All items for information. I usually go and look at these for good information on what the community is discussing, but there wasn't a lot in there. So with that, we'll go on to the next items, section 8.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We're moving to 8 reports. R1, it's a report from the Development Services Division regarding application numbers RZ23C02. This is 1441 Fisher Road, PID 006-831231.
Ms. Boyle, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So presented before you is the zoning amendment application for 1441 Fisher Road. The subject property is located at the intersection of Watson Avenue, Fisher Road, and Fairfield Road in Cobble Hill, within the village area growth containment boundary. The property is designated residential with a local area plan designation of village residential, and falls within the service areas of the Cobble Hill Improvement District water system, Cobble Hill Village CBRD-owned sewer system, and the Mill Bay Improvement District fire service area. The applicant is proposing a zoning amendment to reduce the minimum parcel size from the current 900 square meters permitted to 390 square meters to allow for 15-lot conventional subdivision. The principal use on these lots would be single detached dwellings with accessory uses of secondary suites and home-based businesses. The improvement district water system and CVRD sewer system would be extended to service the whole development. As reviewed in my report, staff consider the proposed zoning amendment to meet the intention of the OCP, which encourages infill growth within the growth containment boundaries and serviced areas. The proposed development will still preserve the rural character by allowing for small-scale, single-detached dwellings with secondary suites. As the property would need to be included in the intensive residential development permit area mapping, DPA 9, because the property sizes are less than 0.074 hectares, an OCP amendment is also required, so a public hearing would be required. Development Services consider the proposed zoning amendment to meet the intention of the OCP and recommend that the application proceed with external referrals. Once the external referrals have been received, if supportive of the application, staff recommend that the zoning bylaw and OCP amendment bylaw be prepared and forwarded to the board for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle. So just looking at this, this is, as it says in the report, this is the preliminary step to introduce the application. So with that, I will go to committee members for questions for staff. Director Nicholson.
Thanks. I have several questions.
Fire away.
Starting with, it says in your report that there's a high potential a high potential that it's an archaeological site identified in RAD, and I didn't know what that meant.
Ms. Boyle.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Nicholson. So yeah, I pulled the map from the remote, I can't remember what the acronym starts for, Remote Archaeological Assessment Data. So there has been a previous overview assessment that identified certain portions of the property that had high or potentially high archaeological potential. So if the board requests as part of the zoning amendment application, a more thorough archaeological investigation could take place.
Okay, that's interesting. So I've never had one of these. So maybe some more guidance on that would be helpful. And I have some questions about the size of that's being proposed. You propose to go down from a current 0.09 hectares to 0.039 hectares, which is, the 0.039 hectares is even less than the 0.04 minimum lot size for intensive residential development. So I guess my question, first of all, is why is intensive residential at 0.074 hectares? Because seems like quite a lot, very small. It seems very small.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, so the property size would be 0.039 hectares, not 0.39 hectares.
0.039.
Yeah. I will be honest and say I don't know why the intensive residential was set at 0.074 hectares. I don't know if someone from Strategic Initiatives or, nope.
I think she's looking at you, Mr. Tippett. Okay.
Okay, I just find it curious that we have these minimums. There should be a reason for it. So if we're going below what we normally would do, we should understand what the implications of that are. I noticed that with this proposal, there will be like a total of 3 meters between homes from side to side, which is pretty small. So I'm trying to get a picture in my head what this looks like in terms of a lot size for building. So is there much, like, would you be able to fit, what could you fit on that lot? From a square footage, like a footprint kind of thing?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, I don't have an exact square footage in my mind calculated. Can't do the mental math right now. I don't know if the applicant is in the room. Is it
Yeah,
possible?
we'll go to the applicant after
Sure.
we're done.
Okay.
Director Nicholson.
I'm sorry, I've got lots more.
Sure.
Well, should maybe one more and then we'll see if anyone else has questions.
All right, so but where I'm going with this question is, in our, in the OCP, village residential is supposed to be encouraging a range of housing types. And priority should be placed on aging in place housing and low-density multiple unit housing. So I'm unclear why, when we're dealing with such, what appears to me to be such small lots, proposed lot size, why we are going down that road of single detached units. And it seems like the location would be more in tune with a multi-unit kind of a complex, and that leads me into my next series of questions, which I can pause now, which is about stormwater management and the fact that there's that easement running down the middle of the site. So I'll stop.
Director Wilson, then myself.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I can probably address one of the questions that Director Nicholson has asked, and that's why this particular thing. But of course, the applicant is in the room. The problem at the moment with building more on that particular site is that fire flow. And I think Cobble Hill Improvement District is working on that at the moment. They don't have the kind of fire flow levels that would permit a higher density or more multifamily types things. That's one of the answers. But I think Mr. Smith can probably expand on that.
Fair enough. And just so that everyone's clear on what the process, we'll go with questions through to staff, and in conclusion of that, we'll ask if the applicant has anything further that they'd like to add and pose, and perhaps answer questions directed by the committee members. I'll go back to Director Nicholson for now, and I'll wait. Director Nicholson, go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't think I was necessarily implying that there would be increased density. Maybe 8 townhouses would be more appropriate. In which case, that leads me to, that thinking leads me to the effect of the stormwater management. And I understand that Cobble Hill has a drainage service function going on there. And I don't understand, I would like to understand what that looks like, because our thinking about stormwater management needs to change because of our water issues. So the sort of the typical drainage system is about moving water efficiently and effectively that off it into a water course, right? And that's not appropriate anymore, because we really need to be concerned about trying to mimic as much as possible the natural infiltration into the groundwater, the infiltration that moves through the system into the streams. And every time we cut down the green trees and so forth, we are changing the evapotranspiration. So basically, we're changing the water budget. And so we need to be designing our systems. So I am wondering what our current system is like, and whether if it's great, then that's great. Then we can just maybe develop this so that it can actually not cause any more damage to the water budget. Or else maybe this is an opportunity to improve what the existing stormwater management is. So that's sort of where I'm going with that question. And I'm sorry this is so complicated.
Ms. Pressman, do you have something to bring to clarity to this process?
Well, thank you, Chair. Louise Knodel-Joy is here from the Utilities Division, and perhaps could just explain the current structure of the drainage service area.
Ms. Knodel-Joy. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Yes, through the chair. We developed the drainage service area after the flooding happened in Cobble Hill in the early 2000s. There was a couple of culverts that went under property lines that were crushed, and we managed to create the service area. Runs from Hutchinson Road up to Galliers and basically the village area. It's kind of a big square. We manage structures. We don't manage road drainage. We don't manage ditch drainage. That's Ministry of Transportation and Highways. We manage structures that highways will not manage. So we make sure that those structures are flowing and operating. We put some money away every year so that there's a reserve in case we have to replace those structures. But in general, if it's going to be adding a lot of impact, we may need a drainage study to look at what we have there. And often we ask for a peer review because we don't really have a hydraulic engineer on staff that will look at that. So that's generally the drainage service area in Cobble.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much. So I guess my question is about the drainage infrastructure. Is it primarily pipes, or is it designed to retain water on site and let it percolate into the ground, or?
There's one structure in Soren Place, and that's exactly what that is, pipes underground, and it goes down, and that was when that subdivision was developed. Cobble Hill, we started out with the Twin Cedars drainage, Galliers Road drainage, and then after the flooding, we combined the whole area into one large service area. There's another, it's mostly structures. Other than that one in Soren, on one subdivision, it is not, the whole system is not designed to go directly in the ground. I would have to
It's designed to move the water off.
To move the water, yes.
So, okay, thank you. That answered my question.
Next question.
This is there.
Through the chair.
Yep.
May I,
Oh, please.
yeah, so as part of the subdivision process, a development permit is required. And as recommended, this property would be included in DPA 9, the intensive residential development permit area, because it's a lower property size than that cutoff. And it's also within the aquifer protection DPA 4, and those two development permit areas in combination with the subdivision servicing, or no, the works and services bylaw that we have, do require that as part of the subdivision application, a pretty thorough stormwater management plan be submitted that would ensure that all drainage on the property is managed on the property. And I think Ministry of Transportation is quite strict about this too, and making sure that the drainage doesn't run off the properties with subdivision into their roadways. And DPA 9, the intensive residential development permit area, is also, that triggers the form and character development permit area guidelines, which require landscaping. So there's more involvement in CBRD in terms of landscaping at the outset prior to final subdivision than, let's say, like larger lot subdivisions.
So just before I go back to you, Director Nicholson, so I'm just wanting to bring a little context to, we've got your recommended resolution. I read your report fairly thoroughly. This is the initial look at this with the potential for areas of concern to be raised with you so that you can incorporate with the applicant these concerns in later reports to come forward upon receipt of the referrals. So we're not really doing a deep dive, but we're bringing to your attention those things that we as a committee deem to be important. So is that more or less where we're going with this?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you, Mr. Chair.
Director Nicholson.
Right, so I think stormwater management is important, and I think that there's an opportunity to perhaps not go down the single-family little lots and do a better job that will help with the whole water management situation. And yeah, like I get we try and keep water on site, but we just heard that the existing drainage system is about moving it off and not, so if it hooks into that without some added, and you've got this wetland or this wet area that goes right diagonally across the site, it seems to me one should be trying to work around that to continue to use that as opposed to chopping it all up into. So that would be my concern about the proposal.
Thank you, and I guess I hesitate, but I'll bring this to the committee in that we have potential to direct more specific types of growth and form and types of development that we would want to see. But I think under what I've read in the report, we are obliged to consider what the applicant is bringing to us in the form of what they want to do for the development. So clearly hearing what Director Nicholson is saying, the applicant and the application is what we have before us. And our job is to consider whether at this early stage we want to see this proceed to getting the further information and for the consideration of Director Nicholson's concerns and any other concerns that may be brought forward. So this is what we have before us. At this point, I would ask if there are any further questions for staff before we bring the applicant up and provide additional information. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And not so much a question as a comment. I fully appreciate the things that Director Nicholson is bringing forward here. But we've got a situation where we know we have to provide more housing. And I would suggest that maybe Director Nicholson would benefit from visiting the site and seeing exactly what has been done and what is planned here. It's not...
Director Wilson, can I just cut you off for
Yeah,
a second?
go,
There is a
sorry.
time for that, and that's when we have the motion on the floor. So this is still questions for staff, so keep
Can I
those
suggest that we
remarks
bring
for
the
a little bit
applicant
later.
forward and let him answer some of the
Yeah,
questions here?
that's where I was going next. So question for staff, Director Abbott.
It's minor, but as I read through the agenda items R2 and R3, I feel that this should have been after R2 and R3, because we get into where the province is about to dictate housing and the need for housing, and R2 talks about the complete community assessment. And I applaud the applicant, excuse me, on this proposal. It ticks all the boxes.
Is that a question for staff?
Well, I wanted to ask about getting getting this item to fall after two rather compelling agenda items. But because when it comes to complete community assessment, we seem to be missing two elements: the transit linkages and, in my estimation, the daily needs. And it's not for the applicant to improve transportation connectivity. And it's not for the applicant to build up the amenities, but it's a compelling challenge across our community, our CVRD, that we're expected to build more houses, and we may not necessarily have the services to round out a community.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, was there a question in that for staff? Sort of. Okay, seeing no more questions for staff, I believe it's Gordon Smith we have here. Do you have anything you'd like to add, or I think we might have some questions for you? So come on up to the lectern and thank you. Ms. Boyle.
So the first thing that I have to say is what a wonderful greeting. So a couple of faces that I know and some people that said hello, and then I'm sitting over here and a man that I don't know brings me 2 kisses and a chance to win $10,000. I mean, that just doesn't happen very often, does it? So I do feel welcomed, and I'm glad to be here. I've been working on this for about 17 months. The reason we haven't been here earlier, Chloe, Ms. Boyle, has done really good work to make this happen, but Cobble Hill Improvement District have had to go through a series of revisitations in order to determine whether water is an option for this at all, and at what level. And to a large degree, Director Nicholson, that will help us address some of your concerns. So in order here, and I'm open to questions at any point during this, just let me know, please. But I noticed the archaeological site option that was brought up. That was brought up by an engineer who was engaged in looking at the sewer system that was going past the property. So immediately upon hearing of that, I contacted the archaeological office at the ministry, and that same day received a letter saying that there was absolutely no interest in this property, none. So I have submitted that letter. I believe it's Ms. Boyle would have that on file. I still have it, but there was no archaeological aspect involved in this property at all. I note when looking through the official community plan that that part of it is to provide incentives for developers to construct multifamily dwellings. I really don't know what that means, but with that in mind, and my initial tact on this property was multifamily, because it's in an area where, you know, you're in the core of a village, and as you move out from the village, you might expand the land base, you know, in each dwelling situation. So I thought that was a good option, and I remember many, many years ago, Jerry Giles had looked at that with main floor commercial and residential above, just across the road from where I am. So I considered that. I had support. There were a couple of staff members that attended within a couple of weeks of my having purchased the property, which was very welcomed at the time, so thank you. And we started to look at multifamily dwellings. So the problem there is water availability. There is not enough water to support anything more than potentially duplexes on that site, maximum of 16 units. So I thought about duplexes. A fellow that I know has recently completed 85 similar lot homes on Casino Road, North Cowichan. So I went to look at those. I looked at the plans. Everything that we're doing, they're larger lots than he had produced, but I went up there and I found a neighborhood. I found a neighborhood that was sold complete. So the homes, this is part of the development process, were complete. They had their gates and their finished driveways and their foliage, you know, their landscape and fences, and everything was done and it looked nice right away. So it's my intent to work along those same lines. When I saw those small lots, those lots, and the initial option that I forget what the actual designation is from North Cowichan, but they're small lots. They're 3,800 square feet is what it works out to in the North Cowichan one. I think we're looking for something just over 4,000. Our smallest lot is quite a bit larger than that. Our average lot is 6,000 on this property. They're not any wider, a little bit wider than the ones on Casino Road, but they're quite a bit deeper. So these are considerations in determining what would be best on there. When I looked at duplexes, I thought about, I talked to lots of people, friends, realtors, the perspective that I got was that duplexes are great, and I could sell a couple more units, but it's not just about the sale, it's about being proud of what you've done. And I thought, if I had single family, that might appeal to a different audience, that it might actually be more appealing in the core of the village than duplexes might be. So when you come into Cobble Hill Village, the very first things that you're going to see are the pub and my development. So it's important. You know, the pub looks as it does. We've got the green space in front of it, which I know very well. We sponsor music in the park every year, and I'm on the other side of that. And it needs to look good. It needs to look good for a whole myriad of reasons, because you will agree that it needs to look good. The neighborhood would like that. I want to sell good-looking places because they sell better. So all the way along, it needs to be well presented. So with that in mind, I looked at amenity contributions, and I made a couple of options available that way. And I think I have some great possibilities that to offer in the future. One of those is a boulevard along Watson Road, treed, to mask the interchange between the greenery, the green space, the little park, and this new residential development. So I think that would look gorgeous. It's something I actually sat down with a couple of staff members about a year ago to discuss this, and it was considered in a positive light. My suggestion at that time was that this is a really expensive thing to do at the outset, and that if I would be able to, and I've always thought about this, actually use my parks money that I will have to give away to actually enhance the area where this parks money is coming from, right on my property and next door. So I think that would be a marvelous use of that cash value that I would then increase to create this boulevard. So let's put that on the table. I know their parks have a couple of concerns with regards to that, but it's something to consider moving forward, I think. I would be spending about $700,000 to get both sewer and water closer to all my neighbors beyond my development. So that's a fair chunk of money, and it would mean that as we moved up Fisher Road, anybody for the sake of one lot could come into the sewer system or come into the water system along there. So that has some value as well, I think. The Director Nicholson, I think you were asking about the right-of-way that goes through the center. That was core to some of your questions. So before I bought this, I had to know about that core. Otherwise, it would change the value of this property quite considerably. So before I bought it, I pulled a couple of strings, and I had a full environmental assessment done and a full water impact done before I bought it. So I still have both of those, and they're available to anybody here at any time. What exists right now at one end of the property in the northwest end is a 24-inch culvert. In the southeast end is a 24-inch culvert. And in between is a ditch that was created by MOTI in the 60s. And basically, water comes out of one, and it goes through the middle of this ditch, and it goes into the other one. So I propose that I need to redirect this slightly at the beginning, only to the tune of about 100 feet, and slightly at the end, to the tune of about 50 feet. And if it was preferable for environmental reasons, any other reasons, that I would leave it open in the middle with riprap and fenced as a little park area that was owned by MOTI, but was accessed by the people that own the homes that surround it. So it can still be open. By the way, underneath this, it's not going anywhere, it's all clay. So about 1.5 feet from the peat that is at the bottom of this little area, it's just solid clay. And so there's no more dispersion into the soil at that point. When it leaves and it goes out to, I guess it's Twin Cedars and other places, hopefully there is over there. But on this property, it's well considered, I believe. Stormwater, I needed to look at that as well. The same individual that did the engineering for all of the right-of-way for MOTI looked at stormwater management as well. I would have to have that engineered differently based on the size of the lots and the footprint that was on each lot and so forth, but that was all part of the general thinking at the time, and there's no concern about actually taking care of that water. The water's already coming through there and going out the other side. We're just doing a couple of things differently with it in between. That is the bulk of what I would add at this point. I think there was, Parks had thought about the possibility of a little pathway up along Fairfield. And I know it's on a couple of plans that they have, but I think it would be important to remember that that is actually owned by MOTI, that area, and that it's a cul-de-sac and a cul-de-sac, and there's about 150 feet in between. And that 150 feet only exists because one person with a two-acre parcel wouldn't give up his half of the right-of-way that needed to be 66 feet, 30 meters, for the two subdivisions that were done 20 years ago. And so I really enjoy that walk through there. I don't want to change that. I want to enhance that, but I will be asking MOTI to allow me access through that to some driveways. But I intend to make it as pleasant as possible. So many people enjoy that. And again, the people that will live in this 15-unit neighborhood would appreciate it as well. Can I answer some specific questions?
Fantastic. Let me go to Director Acton first. Anyone else?
Thank you. Well, I wish more developers stood up here and had out-of-the-box thinking. I love your boulevard idea. That sounds great. And we do know that anything that you build will be probably beautiful. But I didn't glean why the single houses. When I read this report, that's what I was thinking was like, if you're gonna go so small lots, why not do townhouses when we really have a lot of seniors or seniors, for example, that don't want to have to leave the area, and the transit is hard to deal with, and at least that it would be in a core, and looking 20 years down the road, it's like walkable. So, as a senior, you don't have a lawn, you got a strata, you lock the key and you go. So we definitely need more housing like that. So I thought you were going to say why that maybe you
Yeah.
considered townhouses, but I didn't hear.
Very first thing I considered. I even drew up where they would go and what they would look like. The problem is water, it's fire suppression. So in the building code, you can go up to 4 joined units within one part of the code. As soon as you go beyond that, it changes quite dramatically. Within what's called the Fire Underwriter Survey, which is the insurance company that indirectly monitors and judges all fire department and insurance programs throughout North America, there are ratios of volunteers and how far are you away from the local fire department, how big are the dwellings, what are the sizes of the dwellings, how many are joined, and so forth. So there's a formula that goes into determining how many places you can have joined. Because as soon as they're joined, theoretically at least, you have fire transfer potentially. So that's part of the picture. Cobble Hill, who in one sense are the envy of the island with as much raw water as they have, what they don't have is the infrastructure to support it. So they would need one more full tank up on the hill and big pipes, which I'm putting in, by the way, in order to be able to take that everywhere it needs to go. So my initial thought was doing groups of 4 townhouses because that fit the building code very nicely. It fit well what I wanted to do. It fit on the property very nicely too. But there's no way within the next, 5 years, I would guess, that that's possible from a water point of view.
Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Smith, can you just expand upon the range of houses that you envisage? I'm particularly interested in those that are more accommodating for seniors.
Yeah. So for a number of reasons, one for special needs reasons, I'm very much part of that. One for seniors, and one for sales. Okay, so those are all 3 really good things to drive this. The greatest part of the market, if you take the middle of all of that, you need square footage, bedrooms, but you need a level entry, okay? So if you have a level entry, if you have little kids, that's fine. But if you have aging in place or special needs people, that's ideal. So if I can work towards level entry situations, that's the best way to go about it. Not all of the property leans that way. I'd say 70% of it provides opportunity for level entry options. And those level entry options would be very similar to Casino Road. If you're interested in what that looks like, that neighborhood, go out there and have a look. They're not big houses, but they're well priced and they're on nice lots, and it's a proper neighborhood. Then they all have full daylight exit entry basements, full walkout basements. Those walkout basements are good value because the cheapest thing you can put in a house is a basement in order to increase your square footage. So whether it turns into a storage place or a bar and a rec room and an extra bedroom and an office, or whether it becomes a suite for your in-laws or something like that, that kind of option is available in one type of that home. That as I said, that'd be 70% or so of the total. The others, just based on the topography, would have some stairs, maybe 3 feet going up to the main level entry. That's what I envision, at least. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Director Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no other, any other questions from the committee members, I'd like to speak on behalf and move the resolution, move the recommendation forward.
Moved and seconded, and I've got, do you want to speak to the resolution? Go ahead.
I could, please, yeah.
And I'll put you next.
As far as I can see, and as we've heard, both the staff and the applicant have done extensive work and investigation into this project. We've heard from Mr. Smith, the archaeological aspect has been looked into. The water aspect, as you know, is one of the things that I look very carefully at. There, as far as the aquifers at the moment are concerned, that's not a big problem. The drainage, I think Mr. Smith has addressed as well. I see this whole application as a positive step forward for much needed housing. And especially with the additions and extensions to the Cobble Hill sewer system, which, as we know, thanks to engineering, is one of the jewels in the crown of Cobble Hill there. And I have no hesitation in supporting and asking for the support of the committee to move this recommendation forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
Well, I just wanted to understand the water situation a little bit more. So the Water Improvement District doesn't have enough water to support more housing here? Is that what I understand?
Mr. Smith, could I get you to grab a seat? I think we're going to need staff up here.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson. So as I understand it, the Cobble Hill Improvement District has enough water, but they don't have the infrastructure to service the fire flows required for buildings more than 4 units. And I know the applicant has been doing extensive work with Cobble Hill Improvement District to figure that out.
So it's just about fire flows?
Yeah, it's not about the quantity, it's the flow rate. Is
Do you
my
have a follow-up,
understanding.
Director Nicholson?
Okay, and then my other question is, what can we do to bring our stormwater management situation in Cobble Hill into a more integrated management kind of a watershed place?
I'm
with
going
this
to
development?
step in for a second here. That doesn't really pertain to the application. I think it's an appropriate resolution to after we've discussed this, but specific to the general Cobble Hill stormwater management. I think that would be an appropriate follow-up resolution to what we have on the floor.
Okay.
Director Wilson on the resolution on the floor.
Yeah, just to answer the question about Cobble Hill Improvement District, we have one very large, the Cobble Hill Improvement District has one large reservoir tank at the top of the Cobble Hill Mountain. That's fed by an 8-inch pipe, I think, 6 or 8-inch pipe, which at the time of building was more than sufficient. As the growth has continued, that is now no longer sufficient to meet the kind of fire flow that is needed for the larger structures. They are in the process of making grant applications to build another reservoir and to extend or expand that pipeline down the mountain. So that's in hand at the moment.
Thank you, Director Wilson. I've got myself on the list. Director Nicholson, your microphone's still on. Just in general, this is our sort of first blush look at this, and I think that staff have provided us with a significant amount of information for this sort of first stage authorization to move forward. I'm just going to note that the big concern that I'm thinking of now and have been thinking of a lot recently is that we have a housing crisis. And I certainly understand that given our demographics and what our housing needs assessment has said, that there's going to be an increased demand for seniors housing. But essentially, and I've heard this line used, what kind of housing do we need? We need all kinds of housing. So at this point, I think that there's pretty convincing argument that most of the I's have been dotted and T's have been crossed, but we still have a fair bit of information to be gathered. And I think staff have heard what the committee has said today, and I'd like to see this proceed to the next stage and get that additional information. So with that, I turn to committee director. Oh, why Ms. Segal? That's it, right? Director Segal.
Thank you. Just a clarification on the resolution. So C and D of the referral agencies, it's the Cobble Hill Improvement District and Mill Bay Improvement District. And we've been talking about water and fire really interchangeably. I'd just like some clarity on which improvement districts these are.
Through the chair to Director Segal. So the Cobble Hill Improvement District is the water provider, and Mill Bay Improvement District is the fire service. So they'd be the fire trucks, but yeah.
Ms. Boyd, would you please read the resolution that was published?
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that the draft zoning amendment bylaw and official community plan amendment bylaw for application number RZ 23C02-1441 Fisher Road PID 006-831-231 be prepared by staff and forwarded to the board for consideration, and that application RZ 23C02-1441 Fisher Road PID 006-831-231 be forwarded to the following external agencies: Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Advisory Planning Commission, Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Parks Advisory Commission, Cobble Hill Improvement District, Mill Bay Improvement District, BC Transit, Ministry of Transportation, School District Number 79, Cowichan Tribes, and Malahat First Nation.
Everyone clear on the resolution? Call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Director Nicholson, would you like to propose a resolution on stormwater management in Cobble Hill?
I'm not sure what kind of a resolution you'd like.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to suggest that, Ms. Pressman.
Just a reminder, there was a resolution, I believe, maybe at the beginning of this year or last year, that Utilities Division and Environmental Services and Development Services are coordinating on responding to reporting back to the Committee on Stormwater Management throughout CVRD.
Right, but I think
Go ahead.
on this particular application, there's an opportunity here to maybe improve our existing stormwater management in the Cobble Hill Village. And I know that I've heard from Ms. Knowle-Joy about that it's basically an old-fashioned type system, and I don't think we want to just build onto that. We want to improve it to become a more integrated, environmentally tuned into the watershed system.
So I've got a suggestion, that we take a short break and staff and Director Nicholson consult as to, and the director for the area consult as to whether or not we want to proceed with a special quick look at the Cobble Hill stormwater management, and we'll reconvene at Welcome back, everyone. I turn to Director Nicholson, who's typing furiously.
Thank you. So I would move that, two things. First, that applicants provide to the CVRD at their sole expense an on-site drainage assessment and stormwater management plan, including the proposed realignment of the existing drainage right-of-way. And two, that staff report back on opportunities for improving the existing Cobble Hill stormwater infrastructure in conjunction with this application.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, duly moved and seconded. I see staff chatting in the back, but I thought we had some information about that presented earlier. Could you provide me with some clarification, Ms. Boyle? On the first item,
About
stormwater management
okay.
specific to the item that we've just
property,
outlined.
yeah, the applicant, I believe, either has had one done or it's in progress, a drainage study for, and stormwater management plan for the property, so that can be provided. My confusion was about if I, as staff, was supposed to report back on stormwater management in Cobble Hill Village as part of the application, or if that would be a separate staff report, perhaps by utilities division or.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a two-parter, and I think they might actually be severed, because I think they're in two different realms. One specific to the application, and one is of a more general nature. So, Director Nicholson, your thoughts on severing the two items?
Oh, good idea.
Okay, we're going to sever the two items. One is specific to the previous application, and one is of a more general nature. Director Abbott?
Could we have that read back for maybe a little slower and a little louder?
Let's do number one first. Who's got it? Director Nicholson, can you read it back for us?
I move that applicants provide to the CVRD at their sole expense an on-site drainage assessment and stormwater management plan, including the proposed realignment of the existing drainage right-of-way.
Everyone clear on number one? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, yeah, we can have a discussion. Go ahead, Director Wilson.
If I understand what Ms. Boyle just said, the applicant has already provided that. I'm not sure where this.
My understanding, it's, as what Ms. Boyle has just said, it's either been done or is in progress. So the necessity for the resolution, the director wants it on the floor. It's been duly moved and seconded. So we will have an answer to that fairly quickly, I believe. Director Acton.
The risk of offending anyone, this has taken an hour, and I feel like we're getting to, staff has heard us, and we're not professional planners, and this is too detailed for me. I don't even understand what I'm voting on, really, and I did hear that the applicant is doing that and was happy to share it with us, so I'll be voting against it.
Director Abbott.
I echo Director Acton's comments.
Then the path forward is clear for everyone. If you feel that this is unnecessary, then you can vote against it. If you'd like to see it proceed, which it sounds like it's already in the works, you can vote in favor of it. Any further discussion on the resolution? Everyone understands the resolution. Call the question. All those in favor? Everyone opposed? The motion carries. The second resolution.
I would move that staff report back on any opportunities for improving the existing Cobble Hill stormwater infrastructure in conjunction with this application.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. I'll go to the director for the area first.
Yeah, your suggestion earlier on, Mr. Chair, we did have an impromptu discussion over there, and there was engineering present. This is being investigated on a regional basis and will be part of that part that comes forward. So a separate investigation for us at this moment would seem to be unnecessary as well, because it is in the plannings for engineering to be carried out.
Thank you, Director Abbott.
I liked the sound of the motion until I heard the word in conjunction with this application. I think the need is there, but not to hitch it to this application?
I think they were separated specifically to not connect them, but Director Nicholson, go ahead.
Well, no, actually, they are connected, because I think that when you come forward and ask for a rezoning where there's going to be significantly more density, there are benefits that you will receive economically, and the community also needs to receive benefits, I think, for that. And this is an opportunity, perhaps, to improve a stormwater management system that I don't believe is very modern for the issues that we have to face today with water. So I think it's an opportunity, and that's why I'm proposing this.
Okay, that brings it into much sharper relief for me. Any further, Director Martman?
So now, I like the idea, the concept, I just don't understand the timelines, how these things balance. If one's proceeding with an application and one's looking at how we could improve things. I like the idea if an opportunity exists, but I'm not sure how will we know and when, and does one hold up the other? And maybe the director, staff can answer that.
Do you want to take a crack at it? Oh, here comes Ms. Pressman.
Through the chair to Director Martman, I would really actually need to rely on some input from the Utilities Division on that, and what level of study is going to be required to report back on that. I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. I'd like to take a quick recess, and we'll come back to this. This is on the floor, and I'm looking for... All right, welcome back, everyone. Call us back from recess. So as things have developed, things have become more clear. I have considered what has just transpired in the last few minutes, given the motion is to tie the two, the motion that's on the floor and the one previous. I'd move to table the motion that's on the floor. Do we need a vote on that? No, we don't. I'm tabling it. Okay. Bringing back the first motion brought back after the recess for reconsideration. I will be changing my vote. And now it is on the floor for reconsideration, Ms. Boyd.
Yes, it is, sir. Chair, the applicant provide to the CVRD that their sole expense an on-site drainage assessment and stormwater management plan, including the proposed realignment of the existing drainage right-of-way.
All right. Is there any further discussion on that? Director Wilson.
Yeah, just for clarity, Mr. Chair, if it's my understanding that the applicant already has one here, are we asking for a brand new one, or that he just provides the one that he has here?
We all have heard the same information, and my assumption was that under the last vote that be provided.
Okay.
So at this point, but hearing the impetus for these motions, the first and the second were tied, and I think procedurally, it's asking one applicant to have to have entwined in their application further work around another resolution, which is the tabled resolution. That's why I'm contemplating changing my vote and precipitating the reconsideration.
Okay.
So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is defeated. Tabled resolution, call back from the table for consideration. Could you read the resolution, the second resolution?
Thank you, Chair. That staff report back on any opportunities for improving the existing Cobble Hill stormwater infrastructure in conjunction with this application.
Any discussion? Director Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have real concerns about the words, as Director Abbott has pointed out, in conjunction. We need housing. This may well be cause a delay in building that housing of what is, to me, a perfectly good application. So I would ask that the words in conjunction, or that the words in conjunction with, be taken out.
Are you moving an amendment?
Yes, sir.
We have a moved and seconded discussion on the amendment, which is deletion of the words in conjunction with. Director Nicholson. Did I just see your, no? Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Staff report back on any opportunities for improving the existing Cobble Hill stormwater infrastructure.
And just remind everyone that this is already underway. Director Nicholson?
Well, I would like clarification on that, because I think what I'm looking for is something specific to this stormwater infrastructure in Cobble Hill Village. And I believe what staff are looking at is the overall issue of stormwater management in the region, in electoral areas. So I think they're actually two different things. But
We have
correct me if
staff
I'm
in the
wrong.
room. Mr. Etherington?
Through the chair, what is on our desk right now is to look at a comprehensive stormwater management plan for all of our electoral areas. Cobble Hill is obviously one of them. So it is in the works. How we can deal with it, I think the thing that we have to remember is the drainage is Ministry of Transportation. It's not us. So that's with talking with Modi, that's a part of the whole, I guess you could say the whole thought process that was brought forward to us about a year ago, as Michelle brought up.
Director Acton?
Looking to Director Nicholson, this motion makes sense when it's in conjunction with this application to me, but I think it's just a conversation, so could we just leave it to staff? They've heard you, and this is becoming quite complicated and maybe more complex than it needs to be. To me, it's just like, it's your concern, staff have heard you, they can go back, talk to the applicant, talk with staff, and figure out, how does this all play together, and then bring it back with the application. This is just a referral at the moment.
So we currently have a motion to amend, an amendment motion to the resolution to remove the in conjunction with. I think I'd like to test the House on that specific amendment. Any further discussion? So it's to remove the in conjunction with. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Now back to the original amended resolution. Could you read the amended resolution for me, please?
Thank you. That staff report on any opportunities for improving the existing Cobble Hill stormwater infrastructure.
We have an amended resolution before us. Any discussion? Director Nicholson?
Well, I'm actually going to vote against this because while I think would be a useful exercise at some point, I don't necessarily think it's a high priority right now, given that there is infrastructure in place that is doing some good. And the whole point of the motion was to look and see whether there was an opportunity with further development in the village with this application to use some sort of an amenity contribution to improve the structure. So if that's not happening, I don't think it's a high priority at this time.
So we just had the mover of the motion indicate voting against, and we have a motion that's been amended on the floor. Call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's defeated. Next item.
Thank you, Chair. R2, report from the Strategic Initiatives Division, Complete Communities Grant Request for Resolution. This is referred from December 13th board meeting.
Ms. Garnett.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this report is to request a board resolution for the CVRD to apply for and manage a grant from the Union of BC Municipalities for complete communities assessments for the electoral areas. In August of this year, an application for the first and second phases of the complete communities assessment was successful, and we've been moving forward with that alongside our local area plan development. And so this second Complete Communities grant supports the third step of the local area plan development, which is implementation. The application is due January 12th, 2024, and if we are successful and the board supports this, we would likely hear in April. Thank you.
My understanding is if we pass this resolution, it would go to the January 10th board meeting in which you'd have the application ready to go out the door. Any discussion? Moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Nicholson. Discussion, Director Nicholson.
I was wondering if this grant applies to all the electoral areas or specific ones?
Ms. Garnett.
Sure, through the chair. The complete community assessment is being done alongside each of the proposed local area plans to provide sort of more fulsome analysis in support of the local area plan development.
Any other questions for staff? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Boyd, next item.
R3, this is for information, report from the Strategic Initiatives Division, Bill 44 Housing Statutes, Residential Development Amendment Act 2023, Bill 46 Housing Statutes, Development Financing Amendment Act, Bill 47 Housing Statutes, Transit-Oriented Areas Amendment Act, referred from the December 13th board meeting.
Ms. Garnett, I think there's a keen amount of interest for this report, so please proceed.
Thank you very much. And I am presenting this report and the previous one on behalf of Ms. Breen. I have a presentation, so if I can share that. Just let me get that going. Okay. Sorry, it's not really cooperating. While it's stalled a little bit, so is the WebEx still running? Okay, oh, here we go, excellent, okay, just a little delay. So as you said, this is an update and a report for information regarding three new bills that recently received royal assent. So this is pretty fast-moving legislation. This report was written before the bills received royal assent and certainly before the guidelines and regulations pertaining to them came out. So there are some updates we have, and there are still a lot of uncertainties on it. So the first bill, Bill 44, Housing Statutes. Bill 44 changes housing needs reporting and requires more frequent updating of the official community plans together with pre-zoning, and this applies across the province. So all local governments must update their housing needs reports, and for the modernized OCP, it's really quite good timing. We can incorporate interim housing needs report to meet these specific requirements, and we'll be getting that underway in January 2024. Following that, the zoning must accommodate the housing needs report. And an important part of it is that the emphasis on community engagement during the development of the official community plan, as public hearings are not possible for rezoning applications that are for housing in line with this legislation. So the emphasis is really on the official community plan involving the public at that stage. Bill 46 is the development financing. So as you are aware, because we've had discussions around community amenity contributions in the past and a policy here for the CVRD's electoral areas, Bill 46 eliminates the use of those negotiated community amenity contributions and then allows now local governments to develop an amenity cost charge bylaw that has sort of an expanded list of the types of community amenities that can be considered in a process for that. In addition, there's a sort of expanded opportunity for development cost charge bylaws.
So just the final slide or a paragraph on this, the amenity cost charges. So local governments will have scope to continue to impose charges on new developments to assist in paying for the capital costs, which is important, of community amenities. The Community Planning Division is preparing a staff report that they will be bringing forward in the new year to sort of lay this out. We do not have the guidelines to better understand the requirements of this quite yet, but community planning is working on this, and it will require, if the CVRD proceeds with it, quite an integrated approach. So it's quite a lot of change. And since writing this report, we understand now that this transit-oriented areas bill does not actually apply to the CVRD electoral areas. So we do not have the population or to sort of be subject to these regulations. So. And in terms of the timeline, so we've received the policy manual for the Bill 44, but we're still waiting for the manuals for the other bills. As I said, in January 2024, we will be moving forward with Housing Needs Report, and that will be based on the instructions that are being provided to local governments in January, so we'll move on that as fast as we can. A big piece of this is funding from the province. I think we've all heard that there's 51 million from the province. It's not unclear how it will be allocated to local governments. And so we will wait to hear and report back to you on that. There are quite clear timelines in terms of adhering to these bills. So June 30th, 2024, all the zoning bylaws will have to be updated. And I should clarify as well that there's different levels of density requirements associated with Bill 44, and the only ones that will apply to the CVRD electoral areas are the secondary suite or accessory dwelling unit requirements. There's no requirements in the CVRD electoral areas to contemplate 3 or 4 unit structures. Okay, so that'll be for municipalities over 5,000, and there's other criteria, but it will not apply to the electoral areas. So a lot of the zones already allow, residential zones already allow for either a secondary suite or a small suite, an accessory dwelling unit. So we will have to take a better look at that, but the majority of residential zones already do. So it'll be a bit of fine tuning, but it won't be the scope that was first conceived of in the early days of hearing about this legislation. So the June 30th, 2024 designating transit-oriented development areas, we don't have to worry about that. December 31st, 2025, that's when we'll have to have updated the OCP with the interim housing needs report. And so as I said, more information will be forthcoming in the new year about how we will be rolling out our work plan to comply with this legislation.
Director Martman.
Holy doodle. You can quote me. So in Area H, I think, as you're aware, water is an issue. And I hear increased demand, potentially because of secondary suites or accessory dwellings. Is there any mechanism or anything going to be in place to ensure water will match demand?
Ms. Garnett.
Through the chair, yeah, that's a difficult question in the rural areas. My reading of this, the policy manual, I think it's really intended for development in the more urban areas of the province. There is some language in it that's respecting the fact that on completely unserviced, meaning own well and septic, that perhaps only a secondary suite should be permitted, and as opposed to also an accessory dwelling unit. So there's been some consideration there that there's on parcels of a certain size that are not serviced, I think is 1 hectare. So there's that, but no, it's a bit more challenging when we're talking about provision of water outside of CVRD operated systems. So whether that's, water licensing their own wells or improvement districts, we really don't have a clear sense of how this legislation will affect that. Now, that being said, a lot of the zones already do allow a secondary suite. So it's difficult to anticipate how quickly this uptake will be. There's speculation that this is really going to have long-term results rather than immediate term results, in terms of providing housing.
Follow up.
Thank you. And so just quickly, so if a person does go with a secondary suite on a, a rural residential lot, say 10 acres, and some house has enough water, or should, I guess, two questions come out of it. One is, do they have to have a water license if they are renting and using water for someone else to stay on, use the water from the well? And I think because it's not just primary domestic use. That's one question. And the second question is, lost me. So there you are.
Ms. Garnett?
Thank you, and I'm actually just looking at my cheater notes because it's about a 100-page policy document to absorb. There are, the Drinking Water Protection Act does apply, and this legislation is supposed to be consistent with it. So I would say that the same regulations about determining whether or not you're a purveyor of water, depending on the number of units, that those same regulations apply. So I think, and I don't, quite frankly, know exactly what the impacts will be on water licensing. I think that is still something will be a holdup, right, in our more rural areas where we struggle with that. Yeah.
I think just basically on the speculation, given the backlog of licensing as people come forward and they've got their suites built and they've got their tenants lined up, and the only holdup will be the additional provision of the water license for them to provide a residential scenario. I think we'll see movement on that. I've got Director Wilson, myself, and Segal, and okay. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Garnett. I was just looking at all the CACs, DCCs, ACs, OCPs, HNRs, UCBs. Good luck on that one. You and Ms. Breen have done a lot of work on this, and I appreciate that. But it looks like you're going to have a huge amount more work yet to do with this new stuff coming down. Can you comment on pre-zoning? Because it says, you did mention it, pre-zoning that accommodates 20-year housing supply. How are you going to look at that one and say, this is what we're going to pre-zone for the next 20 years?
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, that's a great question. So the idea of the housing needs report is it's supposed to project, we're supposed to have a good understanding of housing demand for the 20-year period, and then we will very likely need to be reviewing the growth containment boundaries and the land use designations to make sure that we have the capacity within those to provide housing. And that is supposed to be regardless of servicing, regardless of water and sewer servicing and availability. And the role of the development cost charge bylaw and the amenity cost charge bylaw would be to kind of compensate for those, servicing infrastructure demands. And really that's only useful where we have CVRD operated systems. So anytime it's an improvement district, there's not an ability for the CVRD to charge a DCC that would go to an improvement district, right? So that's an issue in some of our areas where we have, where improvement districts are our primary water provider. So the zoning bylaw then we will be doing GIS analysis to understand how the growth or the housing demand connects to the land use designations and growth containment boundaries, and then how that connects to the zoning bylaw as well. Okay. Yeah.
So next on the list, and I'm really curious about the information in the report and the clarification that you've got since, because clearly the electoral areas you say are more or less exempted, but those that have sewer and water systems, are they exempted to the same extent? Because I think that's the intent of a lot of what the provincial regulation and guidelines is that if you've got the systems, we're going to build on those. So is it clearly not going to apply to electoral areas, even if you happen to be lucky enough to have those systems in place?
Yeah, to the chair. So any requirements for 3 to 4 or 6 units, as is contemplated in the bylaws and the bills, will not apply to the CVRD electoral areas, regardless of if there's community water sewer infrastructure.
Thank you. And just on the dollars for the housing needs assessment update, are we waiting on provincial announcements as to allocation of that $51 million? Because I'm having a memory pop up that the committee has actually directed funds in a previous budget to an update of the housing needs assessment, and I'm just wondering if that rings a bell for you too.
Yeah, so my understanding, actually, this relates to the past report, is that there was allocation to support local area plan development for 3 years to demonstrate core funding as part of the requirements for UBCM. So there was that piece. In terms of the housing needs assessment work that we'll need to do, we have an estimate of how much money it will cost, and it will be really beneficial when we hear in January how much money we will receive from the province. But we have to do the work regardless of how much money we receive.
So just for staff to look up offline, my recollection was we did the housing needs assessment. It was based on the last census, and there was a commitment by this committee through budget to ensure that a updated housing needs assessment would be done based on the most recent census, and that dollars were provided through requisition, but I could be wrong. I'll go to Director Segal next.
Thank you. I'm really interested in the waiving of the public hearing, and I'm wondering when that comes into effect, and if that applies to applications that are already in process, or only be to new applications after a certain date.
Ms. Garnett.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. That the legislation is in effect. It's received royal assent. So, you know, what we do with in-stream applications, I mean, I would assume that they would not proceed with public hearing. We are in some fast-moving times, though, with all of this. So I would like to clarify that and just make sure in case, because, yeah, it is always difficult when there's in-stream works. Yeah.
Director did you have your hand up, Director? No, it was Director Deck next.
There's been an awful lot of time and money and effort spent on the OCPs and local area plans, and I'm wondering if you expect that some of the input that residents and communities have made will be disregarded or not taken into account, or sort of put aside, I guess, what I really mean,
Yeah.
when the government, when these regulations are put into effect.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a good question, and I actually think the opposite, because we've had such extensive community consultation with, you know, with our respective communities in the development of this modernized OCP and now the development of the local area plans. And this legislation is telling us that that is the place where we should be doing engagement, because there's not going to be opportunity through public hearing. So I think that for one, you know, that point of we're doing the engagement when it counts, and also we might be in a really great place in terms of our land use designations and our growth containment boundaries. We'll have to wait till we get the revised numbers from the housing needs report, but you know, it's possible that some land use designations and growth containment boundaries need tweaking, others might be fine. And what we've also heard from the communities where they want to see growth. So I think that actually provides us with more information going forward, and certainly, you know, we're not proposing or, you know, to be disregarding any of the input that we've been hearing so far. Yeah.
Follow up?
That's reassuring. And then I'm wondering about the 20-year housing needs assessment. With obviously climate changing so quickly and, you know, other, you know, sort of variables and unknowns, I know you talked about GIS and census, but how do you plan that far ahead?
Ms. Garnett?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the answers to that is that we'll have to be redoing the housing needs assessment periodically, because, you know, the projections will need to be refined constantly. So I'm not quite sure, like in January, when we get more information on the specific requirements of the housing needs assessment, we can look at that more carefully, but there's going to be periodic reviews of them for sure. We won't be leaving it for 20 years and then starting again.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Nicholson?
Thank you.
I guess in order to actually deliver on this, the revised development cost charge bylaw and a new amenity cost charge bylaw are going to be important. So I'm wondering when we would expect those bylaws to be drafted.
Thank you. Yeah, so the bills allow us to adopt these bylaws. They don't require local governments to adopt these bylaws. So my understanding in talking to community planning is that they will be bringing forward a report early in the new year to outline options with respect to moving forward on it. The CPRD, we don't currently have a development cost charge bylaw at all. So both would need to be developed, and there's an awful lot that goes into that. So yeah, community planning delivering early 2024.
Anyone else? Great report. Thank you for the information, and move on to the next item. Oh, Director Abbott.
Would it be inappropriate to ask for item R6 to be moved up the agenda to allow a delegation to speak?
We are at what number right now? R4. We can ask that it be, no, just move it up. Let me just do a quick assessment. Hang on. So we could move it forward. They've already presented during public input, so I'm thinking it'll be should be a relatively quick consideration. So we'll consider R4 next. Ms. Boyd, could you please, or pardon me, you said R6. Is it R6 that you wanted? No, hang on. R6. Yeah, that's the one. Yes, please, Ms. Knodel-Joy, we're going to consider R6 now, everyone.
Good afternoon. And through the chair, we had a request earlier this year from Strata of 5722 Cottages of Marble Bay to join the Bald Mountain Water System. We've looked at this request, and as well, we have a utility acquisition policy where we normally only look at 2 new ones a year, or 2 existing ones a year. We currently are doing 2 of them. Both of them have not been completed in 2023. So we would like to postpone this request until the latter part of 2024. As well, I've added a couple of other thoughts that a grant application for a provincial infrastructure planning grant be prepared for this feasibility study. And if that fails, perhaps we could use some of the Function 130 electoral area feasibility to fund the study. Both of this would save some money if we got some money for the province. It would keep some money in the coffers of the Strata. And if the feasibility study from Function 130 went ahead, again, for the study, it would come out of the feasibility function grant, or feasibility function, and again, save a little money, and they could keep some money in their coffers. So we're currently 2 technologists short. As well, we haven't replaced the engineer, so we're a little thin on the ground for staff.
Thank you, Louise, and for those of you that, I don't think we've had one of these for a little while, and this was fairly commonplace. It makes sense. I like your approach to looking for other funds. I turn to the director for the area. Would you like to move this recommendation?
I'd move it happily.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to it, Director Deck?
I think the representatives from the Water Committee presented very well the facts that I understand as well, and I just want to commend them for their water conservation strategies, which, you know, I have a feeling that we'll all need to be doing sometime in the future. but they've started early as of necessity, and I congratulate them on that. I hope this works out for them.
Thank you, Director Deck. Director Acton.
I guess I'm wondering if, because, like, I have no issue with helping with that, function you mentioned, but only if it's needed, because I don't remember how much was allocated this year, but I know last year wasn't very much, so it's not a big fund if we need it. So usually, like, a water system would have a contingency or like a reserve fund, if they could perhaps pay for it, because even if we did something like that, like, for example, no, not an example, but if we did something like a study for a system, usually that system would pay it back anyway. So if we could, it would just be nice to keep that fund for, unless this is an emergency, I guess is what I'd like to know.
Ms. Knodel-Joy, I believe this will need to be repaid if successful anyways, correct?
I'm sorry?
The fund that she's, I
The
think it was
feasibility fund?
130?
Yes.
If they're successful, they repay
They
the fund.
repay it, yes. It's about $45,000. I believe it's the same as last year. We usually try to do 2 studies a year with it. We're hoping it's about $15,000 to $20,000 study. If we can get grant money, that's half of it. Feasibility money, yes, if it becomes a function, that would be paid back to our feasibility function 130.
Director Acton, are you concerned that there's not sufficient funds to,
Well, does, if this water system already has, I don't know, $100,000 or whatever in reserve funds, perhaps.
I believe it was
They could-
22,000
Yep.
in
Oh,
their
okay.
the request to
Okay.
us. They have 22,000.
Okay, thank you.
have we read the resolution yet? Would you please read the resolution?
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that a review for possible inclusion for Strata 5772 cottages at Marble Bay to join Bald Mountain Water System proceed in the fall of 2024, that a grant application to the Provincial Infrastructure Planning Grant Program be prepared for the water system feasibility study, and if successful, be funded by $10,000, grant and remainder by Strata System funds, and if unsuccessful, be it funded up to $10,000 from Electoral Area Feasibility Function 130, with the remainder by Strata System funds.
Everyone clear on the resolution? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And that will go forward through to the board on the January 10th meeting. Thank you for coming and presenting your information. Back to Ms. Boyd.
R4, report from the Inspection and Enforcement Division regarding building permit fees referred from the December 13th, 2023 board meeting for information.
Mr. Brisky, I read this report with great interest.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a brief slideshow. If Ms. Pressman can help me, I think we had a little bit of trouble earlier, but okay, here we are. So yeah, basically at the October 18th meeting, you had given direction to receive some information about the building permit fees and how they relate to some of our neighboring member municipalities. That should be, that table is an attachment to your report. You have passed building regulation bylaw 4433, so these fees are currently in effect. I am holding my zero carbon amendment report until I hear from you on this. So basically what we did, Michelle, if you can do next slide, please. I took a sample set of drawings. I know it's hard to see on the screen here, but this is a typical dwelling unit that has typical features, garage, deck. It has a secondary suite in it. And essentially what I did is I went through the neighboring districts and municipalities, their bylaws, and generated a building permit fee for this house for the purpose of the report to sort of compare how we are in line with those fees. So next one, Michelle, please. So as I mentioned, This house has an approximately 422 square foot garage, a secondary suite, a small deck, typical number of plumbing fixtures, and about 2,300 square feet of habitable living area. This permit under our previous building bylaw would have cost $3,160. Under our new building regulation, it's $3,800. So that's an approximate increase of roughly 20%. We have a very broad spectrum of permit applications that we receive for additions, renovations, new construction, commercial, retaining wall, what have you. So it won't be 20% across the board, but it'll generally be 15 to 20% roughly on average. Next slide, please. And this table here is essentially here, and it is showing that we have caught up to the member municipalities. Essentially, we were behind or less expensive than they were. We are in line now. There are some other districts on Vancouver Island that have higher fees, but in the report you'll notice, and as I'm sure you've seen, we have received a lot fewer building permit applications this year, and some of the conversations that I've had with my own building inspectors and inspectors in neighboring districts, electrical and gas inspectors, when we're dealing with unpermitted construction, the public is citing permit fees as their number one reason for really trying to dodge the requirements. So this was heavily debated on the first floor, and we believe this is an appropriate increase, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Turn to committee. I got a bunch, but maybe I'll have to just meet with you offline. Director Acton.
I have a comment that I've already told Mr. Brisky, but what I hear actually is that your fees are pretty good.
Director Nicholson.
I'd just like to say I thought it was a great report. Thank you.
So I'll go to my question, and I think it's answered in the detail in your formulas, but sort of contrary to what I said earlier about what kind of housing should we be building, and it should be all types. I do hear people talking about wanting to put in the secondary suite or the suite in their house, or converting an appropriate outbuilding, and the issue of fees is top of mind. So first question is there a means by which we could look at those that are sort of fitting into this idea of providing more housing at an affordable cost? Is there a different tier of building permit fee that could be looked at as far as additional habitable square footage in a home that's meant to be for affordable housing? And the second question is, does your formula, and I'll probably regret saying this, but does your formula allow for putting the boots to, or not putting the boots to, but getting the fees increased significantly on huge high-value homes that are being built in their area? Because there are still those going ahead, and fees don't seem to be as much of a concern for high net worth people building.
To answer your first question, Mr. Chair, I think the bulk of where the fees come from is really the bulk of the rough construction. So if I was going to retrofit an existing basement or an existing building on my property, I likely would have paid the bulk of the fees for that work when I took out the permit for the original construction. The fees that'll apply to converting will be relatively low. Where there's probably going to be costs associated with that won't necessarily maybe in the construction, but maybe some professional reporting and assurances that need to go into certifying the work, maybe structural engineering for an outbuilding or a septic field or something like that. So I can think of a couple examples off the top of my head where fees were generally lower for that type of work. as opposed to if I was building it from scratch. The second part of your question, no. This formula is unaffected by things like expensive taste or anything like that.
I was thinking more along the lines of exorbitant square footage. And would that be, I know that there's a part of the calculation that square footage is part of it.
Certainly. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, if I build a larger house with more plumbing fixtures and things like that, I will pay more. If I build two identical houses on the same street and I finish one to the bare minimum and I finish one with silver hardwood on the floor, then those two building permits will be the same price.
Thank you. Any further questions? Director Segal.
Thanks for the report, and I love this little table. So I see that like we've caught up to kind of our neighboring municipalities, but we're still significantly lower than the other regional districts on the island. Do you know why, and is there still, do you plan to continue to match up with other RDs?
Mr. Brisky.
Thank you for the question. So, yeah, that is noticeable on the table. We haven't looked at the fees in the building department for roughly a decade. You know, I won't get into the weeds, but our department's been very busy. There's been staff coming and going. I don't have any plans to go anywhere. So I think it's fair to say that this will be reviewed again, likely within 5 years or so. And, we might be looking at other amendments to the building bylaw as well if the province continues on with some of the paths they're going down as well.
Any other questions? Seeing none, great report. I love the tables too. I'm a visual person, so that was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so I'm clear, Mr. Chair, so we're okay with what we've got?
I think so. Everybody nodding of heads.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will bring the zero carbon amendment as quickly as I can for you. So thank you very much.
It'll be appreciated. Ms. Boyd.
R5, report from the Development Services Division regarding Development Application Procedures Bylaw Amendment, Bylaw number 4529. This was referred from December 13th board meeting.
Welcome back, Ms. Pressman.
Thanks. I just have a brief presentation that I'm trying to set up properly. Okay. So we've also reviewed the fees in the Development Application Procedures Bylaw and proposed some amendments. The amendments are shown in the attachment B in red in the changes to the existing bylaw. So what we consider to be fairly modest changes, but some improvements in general. So adding an additional fee for work conducted without a development permit to the application fee. Currently, we just have a fee for if it has come in due to a bylaw enforcement complaint. So just adding for clarification if it's already been done. And bringing the property file review fee in line with building inspection fee. Reducing information release fee as well. And then a combined fee for if there's a joint OCP and zoning amendment application, so which reduces the cost for that one actually currently from $6,000 to $5,500. And then some increases to some of the development permit application fees. And an increase for an amendment or renewal for a temporary use permit. We've also made the distinction for covenant amendment or discharge between whether it's delegated to the general manager or for board consideration due to the extra work involved with that. And just for clarification, in the bylaw, it's a discharge is only delegated to the general manager if the terms of the covenant have been met and the covenant is no longer required. And for clarification as well, under subdivision referrals, setting a maximum amount for a preliminary land review extension. So we included some tables as an attachment also in a similar format that building inspection provided for their fees, but noted in the report, it's very difficult to compare development application fees across jurisdictions, although we did try, where possible, to bring them in line, particularly with municipalities within the CVRD. So the orange here, you can see, is where it was really difficult to compare the structures of the fees, and green is where they're generally in line. So that's it for my presentation, and I'm able to take any questions.
Questions for staff? I was noticing that the 6,000 reduced to 5,500. I think the city of Duncan is at 6,000, like 3,000 per. Have we been hearing negative feedback on that charge for the OCP and zoning amendment being too costly? I just feel like we're leaving a little money on the table, or are we wanting to be a little cheaper on that front?
We have from time to time had comments from applicants, on the cost of it, or when it's, particularly when upon review of a zoning amendment application, where it's determined that an OCP amendment is also required, where we're going back and asking for that additional fee. So just because they are being dealt with typically in the same staff report, we thought there was some reasoning for combining the fee.
So this way you're going back for 2,500 as opposed to another 3,000? Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Still feels like leaving money on the table. Any other questions in regards to this? Director Abbott?
I'd move the recommendation to.
What's the recommendation?
That it be recommended
Yep.
to the board that
Seconder?
Development Applications Procedure Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 4529 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded all around. Any further discussion? I too like the tables and charts and the colors. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That goes to is it going to the 10th for? It'll be on for the 10th. Next item, Ms. Boyd. Thank you, Ms. Pressman.
Thank you, Chair. Report from the Utilities Division regarding sewer system establishment bylaw amendments.
What item is this? R7. Ms. Knodel Joy, welcome back.
Yes. So R7 is a report to increase the maximum requisition limit of 3 of our sewer systems. If you remember last year, we increased about 16 of our systems, and basically it's the maximum amount we're allowed to charge for parcel tax. We're allowed to increase it 25% over 5 years. These 3 systems are at the end of their 5 years, so I'm trying to increase them each by the 25%. As well, we're including the property value tax rate, and that's something we've started doing in the last couple of years. So basically, to explain that, if a service area expands, the tax rate of all of them goes up a little, so we're able to increase that as well. Mill Spring Sewer, for the first one, is going to be having 66 new properties that we discussed a couple weeks ago. As well, there was 30, so almost 100 new properties in that service area. If we were unable to increase the tax of 137,000, the taxes would go down, but we'd have to increase user fees. So it's basically a tool in the tool chest, I guess. Cobble Hill Village Sewer, we're going to be we have one development, approximately 30 homes, that wants to be included in the service area as well. Lambourne Sewer, there's a small development there, but it's also reached the 5-year mark. Not every sewer system we're currently charging the maximum, but like I said, if something unforeseen were to happen, we could dip into this, for example, instead of short-term borrowing or something else.
Hang on. Any questions for staff? Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. R8.
Thank you, Chair. R8, report from the Utilities Division regarding the proposed bylaw amendments, CVRD water system service.
Yes, exactly the same. All three of these are at the end of the 5 years. Not all of them are expanding as much, but we'd still like to increase the maximum requisition for these three.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item.
No unfinished business, no new business, question period. I don't see anybody in the gallery.
Nobody online?
Not seeing any hands online, and move to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, sorry.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? We're adjourned. Merry Christmas, everyone.